Welcome, welcome. I get the pleasure of introducing to the stage Armin Vit. He's the co-founder of Under Consideration and the editor of Brand New. I can speak personally as a brand designer to say that it's every brand designer's ambition to get their logo up on his blog and reviewed by Armin. So he's seen them all and he's got a lot to share with you today. So pleasure to welcome to the stage, Armin.
Thank you, Kat. I appreciate you all choosing me over Mindy Kaling. Obviously, you're all Team Ryan, so I appreciate it. So I have a lot to tell you today, so I'm just going to get started. So hello, everyone. Today, I have the difficult task of trying to explain how brand building is done right in less than 30 minutes, so let's get to it. Now, the frustrating thing about branding, brand building, designing logos and identities, coming up with strategies, is that there's no objective right way of doing things. Sometimes doing the wrong thing is the right thing. Sometimes doing the right thing is wrong, but there's no way of knowing what is right or wrong for your brand until you actually attempt to do so. So, what does it take to do brand building right? So despite what we as a branding industry have built up as a complex, expensive, life or death scenario, it's actually pretty simple, and all it takes is 4 things, which is think, do, show, and maintain. Now, before we get into each of those, a little bit about me and why in the world I'm here talking about this. It's not going to be long, don't worry. I was born and raised in Mexico City. I went to graphic design school for 4 years from 1995 to 1999. I graduated from design. I went to work in Atlanta, Georgia at an internet consultancy during the height of the original .com era. That company eventually, it was an internet consultancy, 10,000 people worldwide, 300 people in Atlanta, went bankrupt like the rest of those businesses at the time, moved to Chicago where I went to work for a small design firm. We were only 4 people. Then moved to New York where I had the opportunity to work at Pentagram, which is a fancy design firm. At this point, I'm married. We have 1 kid. Then we realized that living in New York with 1 kid, working from home is not ideal. At this point, we've also started our own business. So we pick up and move to Austin, Texas. Then stuff happens. We have another kid. We get a dog. Then we get another dog. Then we already have 2 kids, 2 dogs. So that concludes the Austin period, and we moved to Bloomington, Indiana, where we've been for the past 7 years. So a lot of stuff happened in between. But key to this story is what happened in New York in 2006, which is when we started the blog Brand New. This is the original homepage at the time, probably one of the very first posts that we published. And we've gone through a number of redesigns over the years. But the premise of the blog has always been the same, which is to cover redesigns or new designs for well-known or big enough companies, products, or services across industries, across the world, and where I write my opinion about them, not because my opinion is the best, but because I'm the one writing them. So it is my opinion on the work, and that's it. Somehow that transformed from a blog that started with 60 to 70,000 page views a month to eventually growing to 2 million page views a month. And again, I don't say this to brag at all, just like, what the hell just happened? I'm just a guy waking up at 5 a.m. and writing about logos. Somehow that is appealing to a lot of people. We had this redesign for 7 years, from 2017 until recently in March when we introduced this newer logo, this newer look, a new typography. And the extent of how much content we include has grown and changed a little bit. But let me just get to scroll through this so you can see the scope of that's just a single week. We've written a bunch of stuff. And the content can range from, something as simple as a before and after for a logo, like for this company that is the most amazing piece of design software, globally renowned for their accessibility and their power. That's $2,000 for the speaking fee that you can have for the product placement. But it can be more in-depth reviews for something more smaller, like a regional art museum, and everything. We cover everything in between: sports, entertainment, consumer products, mostly from the US, UK, Australia, etc. Go Australia, yay. And this is what we do on every given post. We write a little introduction about it. We quote from the press releases. We show the logo. We show the applications. In between all the applications, there's always opinion. We never just quote press releases. If that were the case, you could just go read the damn press release and not come here for an interpretation of that press release in contrast with the work being shown. So you get to see pretty pictures, and you get to read somewhat smart, eloquent words about what you're seeing. At the end of each post, there's some polls. We have the basic levels of great, fine, bad, and you can usually vote on the logo, on the application, on packaging, whatever it is. It gives you an idea. It's not scientific data, but it gives you an impression of how people are reacting to what you're seeing, and it validates how you're feeling about what you're seeing or not. Underneath the polls is the comment section. Over the years, it has evolved from like really catty, somewhat nasty comments on other people's work, and now since we've gone into a subscription model, that sort of took away some of the riffraff of the internet, and now people that are there are nice and eloquent and care about the work. So that's brand new. In the past 18 years, I have written more than 6,000 opinions about logos and identities, which just by sheer volume alone makes me an expert, which to be honest is one of the weirdest expertises out there. And I don't use the word expert as bragging, but again, as complete and utter surprise that I can make any sort of living or impact in the industry at it. Now, before we get back to the 4 points, and I promise we will get to them, I want to share to you how I perceive branding and how logos and fonts and colors relate to it. There are 100 definitions of branding. In a way, all of them are right, and mine isn't meant to be more right than the others, but it helps illustrate branding in a different way. So you have logo identity and branding, and the way that I break it down, at its most basic, the logo is the thing. It's the thing that goes in front of the packaging, the advertising, the website, whatever it is. It's the thing that follows the brand all over the place. The identity is the stuff around it, the typography, the colors, the photography, the illustration. That's just the stuff that supports the logo. And then branding is the experience, the associations that you make with the brand, the memories that you make with the brand, the expectations that you have with the brand based on your interactions with it. Now, another way of thinking about it is that the logo is you as a person. You are the one moving out in the world. You represent yourself, your personality as a logo, as a person. Your identity as a person are your accessories, organic and inorganic. By that I mean the organic, your height, your weight, the color of your eyes, the color of your hair. The inorganic are the clothes you wear, the phone you've bought, the music you listen to. Those are the accessories that complete how you present yourself in the world. And the branding is your personality. So if you are, it's about how, when you walk into a room, how do people talk about you? Like, if you're a nice guy, like, oh, here comes the nice guy, yay. If you're a jerk, they're like, ugh, here comes that fucking jerk face. And like, even if you have a pretty face, because you're a jerk face. And that's the thing with branding. You cannot dress up who you really are. So, with that sort of understanding about when I mention logo identity and branding, that's what I'm talking about. So finally, let's get to the 4 things. And first, I'm going to give you a quick overview of how the 4 things relate to each other, and then we'll dig into each one separately. So think, fairly simple. It's about asking questions. It's an internal process, in the sense that nothing is public yet. It's conversations that you're having behind closed doors. It usually happens between client and designer. And it's hard because you're asking tough questions. You have to be introspective. You have to wonder if you're doing things right. So that's think in a nutshell. Do is about making stuff. Again, this is still an internal process. You're not showing anything to anyone yet. The client is less involved than the designer. This is where the designer takes over and starts to make stuff happen. And it's fun. I'm not saying it's easy and that there are no challenges, but it is fun. It's when you get to create stuff. Then show, that's when you start sharing the results. It's an external process. It's the first time that you start relating to your audience, showing what you've done. The client and the designer do it together, and I'll talk a little bit more about how they do that together. It's fun because you get to share what you've done and what you've been working on for so long. But at the same time, it's also the worst feeling in the world that you want to die because you're inviting opinions. Backlash is going to come no matter what because people hate change. Even if you've done the best logo in the world, people are going to hate it just because it's different from what they've been used to for so many years. So the last piece of the puzzle is maintain, where it is just about a matter of staying relevant. Once you've done all those other three things, you just have to maintain. And it becomes an internal process as well as external in the sense that you're sort of changing the tires on a moving vehicle, that you have to implement what you've been doing as it's going out into the world. In this case, the client takes over the designer. Even if there's a design firm involved in executing, the client is dictating what has to be done and how and at what time and for what purpose. And this is like the hardest. Am I in the way? I just realized maybe I'm in the way. All right, anyway. So those are the 4 points. Now let's dig into think. Think can take on many forms. It can be focus groups, it can be one-on-one interviews, it can be off-site gatherings, surveys, brainstormings, those post-it note sessions where people are posting things on boards and they look busy and like progress is being made, etc. Now, the thinking phase can be a collaboration between client and design firm. It can be a client-led initiative done internally before engaging a partner, or it can be carried out in full by the design firm. In the end, and in its simplest form, it's all about finding the answers to some key questions. Like, what do you stand for? Now, a key to these questions is asking the inverse, because it's as important to define who you are as it is to define who you are not. In this case, what do you stand against? What or who is your villain? So if you're McDonald's, you stand against Burger King. If you're Pepsi, you stand against Coca-Cola. And it doesn't have to be commercially driven. If you're the ACLU, you stand against inequality, injustice. If you're Jeff Bezos, you stand against taxing the rich. So just simple things that you have to keep in mind. What do you want to say? What do you want to avoid saying? You have to figure out who you're aiming to attract and make sure that you're not spending time, energy, and money talking to the wrong audience. So, you're most likely not selling something that's universally loved, like puppies or pizza or tacos. But even if you were selling tacos, you still need to figure out who you're selling tacos to. To continue my taco analogy, for better or worse, if you make tacos, you and your competition will both use tortillas, right? So how can you make the tortilla experience better? Your salsa game more elevated, your al pastor cooking more yummy. Knowing what you have to beat your competition at is as important as knowing what your unique selling proposition is, which in the field of taco making could be any number of things, but enough about tacos. So this is the end goal. Who are you and who are you not? And this is your brand, like knowing your possibilities and knowing your limitations so that you can find a space where you can thrive. And once you know the answers to these questions and many more, this is just like scratching the surface of the kinds of questions you have to ask, it's time to give shape to your brand. So now it is time to do. Now, the first and most integral part to doing is for client and designer to come together. For clients, it's not about finding the best designer, but about finding the designer that is best for you. For designers, it's not about finding the perfect client, but finding one that pays their invoices on time, which I'm kidding, not kidding. You do want to work with clients who you want to see succeed, that you believe in their mission and their vision so much or are so excited by it that you become more personally invested and motivated to achieve the best possible results. So you may have already found the right partner during your thinking phase, as more often than not, in order to figure out what your brand is and isn't, you have to go through research, discovery, and strategy phase that can be facilitated by your creative partner. But if so far you've been on your own, this is where you want to start with your creative partner. It's similar to thinking in that you have to ask a lot of questions from a lot of people, but it's also about field research, digging through the company's archives, experiencing the brand firsthand you're designing for. And this is what is going to establish your foundation to work from. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was readable. I wasn't sure if red on black was going to work in an exterior environment. I'm glad this is a nice LED display. Moving on. From this foundation, you start developing a strategy to help you achieve your goals and to figure out how you're going to present yourself to your audience, which is what eventually yields your brand positioning, brand attributes, your vision, your mission, all that good stuff that would each require a good 30 minutes to explain properly. But this gives you your guiding principles. With a foundation in place and guiding principles to refer to constantly, you can now start designing logo, identity, tone of voice. This is what forms your expression to the world. And finally, it's all about implementing that expression in whatever your brand needs, whether it's packaging, website, brochures, advertising, signage, etc. So, what does all of this look like in a real project? Let's take a look at one good recent example, Manischewitz, which is the leading brand of high-quality kosher traditional Jewish foods in the United States. This was designed by Jones Knowles Ritchie. So before and after, just for reference, and going through the foundation that I showed you, this is what we learned through their press release, from which we get a glimpse into what they did for discovery and research, and it may be reductive, but it paints the picture. So I'm not going to read all of it, but they say they conducted consumer and expert interviews, they visited the Manischewitz headquarters, and delved into the brand archive. Just like basic, core stuff, but at least we know they did it. For their brand positioning and strategy, they share that their branding principles are of inviting confidence, having a spirited personality, conveying craveable comfort, and coming across as a supportive voice among friends. So we know what they did, we know what they're aiming for, and then they start showing us the work. So this is the expression, the logo, then the identity elements, which is the color palette, typography, illustration, photography, and then the tone of voice. Lots of fun words that start to build on the brand positioning. And eventually the implementation, which in the case of Manischewitz was packaging. A lot of packaging, presence on shelves, advertising, and more advertising. So in the end, the ultimate goal is that when you see the full implementation, the brand, is that the strategy and the brand positioning are there under the surface. All those things that they offered in the press release, it's not like people are going, like a consumer is going to buy a jar of matzo ball and think all these things. But the subtext of those things should be present in the work. Now, Manischewitz is a best case scenario, but a lot of brand redesigns fail because they skip any of these steps. So if you skip the discovery and research phase and you have no foundation, you're now just taking guesses. If you skip the brand positioning and strategy and you have no guiding principles, you're now just designing blindly. Skip the logo or identity development or tone of voice or all three and you have no expression. You're now just delivering inconsistency and incongruity. And if you're just implementing random things for the sake of it, you're basically spinning your wheels in mud, going nowhere and making a damn mess all around you. So don't do that. That brings us to show. All right, so with show, there's two main avenues to show what you've done, the press release and the case study, to point out some perhaps obvious things. The press release comes from the client, the case study comes from the designer. The press release is business focused, the case study is creative focused. And to put it in a language we can all get excited by, a press release should have hell a lot of words and a case study should have hell a lot of images. Now, together, these two things alone should leave no question unanswered, which is amazing how many designers and clients get this wrong, where you read a press release, you see a case study, you're like, what happened here? What did I just read? What did I just see? If nothing makes sense after looking at these two things, something went wrong. And for clients, the press release is not the only avenue to show what you've done. The most favorable alternative is a blog post from the internal design team that is usually very detailed. It's almost as if they had to justify all the money and time and resources that they spent. They had to put it into words and show the bosses that they actually paid off, which is great because some of these blog posts are even better than case studies. You obviously perhaps have to do an Instagram post, and this is kind of like, it's usually the worst moment because that's when you're inviting reactions from the general public. And again, most people don't like change, and they're going to tell you, go back to the old logo. Why did you do this? Please make this go away. It's making me cry. Whatever it is, all of that will happen in an Instagram post. It doesn't happen in a press release, but a social media post, forget about it. Kind of like somewhere in between, a launch event where you have something like this. It's a design space, you have swag, you have the identity comes to life. That's a really nice way to show what you've done. No matter what avenue you choose, it's all about launching in sync, especially online. There's nothing worse than going to a website with a new logo and then going to an Instagram page with the old logo, especially when it's so easy to just upload a new file. So make sure that you show things in sync in as many places as possible, as cohesively as possible. Now, before moving on to the last point of maintaining your brand, I wanted to share one more analogy for the designers in the room. So what should go into a case study? To me, a good case study is like a good food recipe. So you want to tell me what the ingredients are through visuals. They should start to get me salivating a little bit, get more excited about what's to come. Then tell me the recipe, the directions, how do they come together with a lot of words. And you have to be careful. Like there's some recipes about how to make the perfect toast. And they're like, well, let me tell you about my Viking ancestry. And now, 100 words later, paragraphs later, like put the bread in the toast and hit on. So don't do that. Just measure your words. But at the same time, in a case study, you want to be nerdy. Like, what is the typeface? What was the type designer wearing the day they drew that G? All those things make me excited for a good case study. And eventually, just show me the results with more visuals, and this should just make me fall in love with your project. So if you'll indulge me, I'll share with you this is what we tried to do with a recent rebrand of Brand New. So this is the old logo that we had. I'll move a little bit more out of the way, which I should have done earlier. And then we start showing the ingredients. So the main ingredient is the logo, the monogram that comes in a variety of forms, the typography, the color palette, the tone of voice. Then we wrote, like, this is the recipe, how it all comes together. Not even going to stop there. There's a lot of words, very nerdy. And then we start showing the final dish. You've seen this multiple times already in the presentation, but those are sort of like our animated color bars that we're establishing as part of how we present ourselves. A logo animation, which is where the trails of color first started to come from. We did a hella lot monogram animations. We just couldn't pick one, so we just were using all of them. And then how because this is kind of like the final serving with how everything comes together, the tone of voice, the typography, the color palette, the logo animations, and how we are showing up with other designers in the world and started to develop the language that's very specific to our audience of graphic designers coming to read about logo commentary on Brand New. And then swag, everybody wants to show, everybody likes swag. So, our hoodie, t-shirt, tote bag, cap, stickers. If you want some, hit me up after. I got plenty. And then hip young people. If in doubt, hip young people always does the trick. And now, like here, I've had the benefit of walking you through the images, but case studies have to present themselves, and there are a dozen different ways of doing it, some better than others, sure, but as long as you cover all of the ingredients, the directions, and results in a balanced way, you'll be golden. All right, so finally, maintain. And this is the shortest segment. Don't worry, we're almost there. And it is the shortest segment because it's somewhat self-explanatory. It is about maintaining, but that doesn't mean that it's the least important. In fact, this may be the most important, as this is where and when branding gets established. Through the consistent application of all that you've built and been doing so for 3, 5, 10, 25 years. And in the beginning, I mentioned that this is the hardest part, and that's because once you've gone through the thinking, the doing, and the sharing, maintaining is 3 things in one. At first, it's a sprint as you rush to get out the door with your new design. And then it's a marathon where you have to find a stride and start developing processes and standards. And just when you have things dialed in and people recognize who you are and how you appear in the world, and you feel like you finally finished the marathon 1, 2, 3, 5 years later, then an ultra marathon begins for another 10, 15, 20 years. And it becomes a real test of endurance of how far you can go. So to end with this running metaphor, it's all about pacing, having spurts, refueling, and finding the wherewithal to allow all of your previous preparation to get you to the finish line. Ironically, once you're there, you can't help but start feeling like things are out of sync, or you sacrifice some consistency along the way, and then it's back all the way to the starting line to think again. So, because the cruelty of this is that if you're only maintaining, it means that you have stopped thinking. If you're only thinking, you're not doing. And if you're only doing without sharing, your brand is not getting the attention it needs. Now, there's a whole lot more complexity, nuance, and variations to these 4 basic steps, and I only had 30 minutes to walk you through a lot. But to sum up, you ideally want to go through some form of this cycle on a regular basis, whether it's for a full rebrand or smaller parts of your strategy or identity or communication, so that your brand building is done right and you get a gold star at the end of it. And that is my time. Thank you so much. And Kat.
Thank you, Armin. That was really good. I'm actually very curious. Did you review your own rebrand?
Yeah, I said it was great. I thought like, there was no other summary. No, I just presented it as the facts and let others make their own, come to their own conclusions. Luckily, it was mostly positive.
Yeah, very good. I'm going to ask a question, and then I would love to throw it out to the audience. This is your chance to ask anything of Armin, so please take it. I wanted to just ask you about the maintain piece, and we kind of heard from Bob Iger earlier today about brands that have really stood the test of time. So in your opinion, do you feel like brands today are aging faster or slower, and what contributes to this?
Yeah, I think nowadays a brand that stays the same, looking the same for more than 2 years, like they've been doing it for a long time. Anything that's been around for 5 years, like it's almost antiquated at this point, just because of the speed of change, the expectations of people, the attention span that once something wears off, once the glimmer of something new wears off, which nowadays is super fast, you have to keep reinventing yourself. So, logo like the UPS logo that lasted for 30 years in one form, it had to change. Amazingly, it stayed the same, but it's gone through some changes. It has, modified a little bit. But yeah, nowadays, brands just have to adapt a little bit faster, which makes for brand building a little bit more complicated because they somehow have to present themselves in a similar way while still sort of scratching that itch for most people to get something new as soon as possible.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question in the audience? We'll bring you a mic.
As a designer, how long should a case study be?
How long?
Yeah.
Longish. Like it should take. Like my scrolling fingers should get tired. Like I think there's some case studies that are just too short. Like at least show me the basics. Like show me a business card, letterhead, advertising, packaging. Just like as a rule of thumb, 10 images. At least show me 10 things. Less than that, and I can't get a full picture of what's going on. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Hi, I was just wondering, for small businesses and organizations, what's your best tidbit of advice with rebranding with a small team and how to be effective?
I couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I'm like, it's loud to me. What's your best advice, like little tidbit for small businesses and organizations who are looking to rebrand with a small team?
Yeah, no, I think it's the cool thing, and again, this is not product placement, but with tools like Canva, you can take a lot of matters into your own hands. I think there's a little bit of a scary feeling, I have to pay a designer, whatever, $500, $5,000, $10,000. So a lot of it, a lot of startups that today we revere as great, Google, Airbnb, they started with shitty logos that they did on their own. Sometimes you just have to put something out there. But if you're ready to spend money and invest time and energy, just like do your research on finding the right partner, because the right partner will do whatever they can to help you succeed. So it's not so much about their work, but finding someone that you align with on how the process should work. And I think having interviewed a bunch of designers and clients, the best results come from when personalities align, more than budget and proficiency. Mm-hmm.
I apologize if this was said already, but I just had a general question about your opinion on something. How do you feel about businesses, specifically bigger brand businesses, who are moving to like more of a very thin, simplistic, minimalistic like style typeface, and then also kind of like scattering that across their entire like brand representation?
Well, in a way, right now, that's like the safe approach. It's just like no one is going to get fired for doing that. So it's a little bit of following some trends that have been established. And it's just like taking the path of least resistance that has become accepted and that works well until the next 5-10 years where people are like, oh, we need to go bold, we need to go big, we need to go colorful, and then that's going to become the safe choice. So it really, like, you can't hate the game. I mean, you can't hate the player. It's just like you have to hate the game. That it's just like that's where it's led us. That's the sort of ubiquitous approach, and you just have to roll with it until someone comes in and like, oh, let's try something different. And then people are like, oh, that's fun. Let's go there. So yeah, it's just kind of like you have to go with the flow and let big brands be late adopters because it's harder for them to steer the ship into that direction. Yes.
Hey, we talked a lot about brand, resistance to change in brands. So what's a brand that you would be terrified to hit your inbox? What's a brand you would never want to see change?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, personally, I'm fine because this is my business. So the more brands change, the better we do. But no, I think I do have one example, Tropicana. So Tropicana redesigned 5, 7, 10 years ago, maybe. And at the time, I used to drink Tropicana when it had the orange with a straw in it. Debbie, didn't you do that one? Debbie's not paying attention. Anyway, it's fine. Then you did the Tropicana with the orange, yeah. So they changed from that to a minimalist design. And I was living in New York. I went to my local bodega to buy Tropicana, and I stared at the little fridge. It was right there, but I just couldn't see it. I was like, where the heck is my Tropicana with the orange, with the straw in it? So every now and then, there is those brands that you're so familiar with. They become, it's like a muscle reflex, and when that goes away, you're like, what just happened? So I think, you don't know what that is until it's taken away from you. So like, I don't know what that might be, just like my Gillette because I shave. Clearly not today, but anything that you use constantly that changes, it just throws you off because you're so used. It just becomes so ingrained that you're like, what happened? But design-wise, to me, everything is up for grabs, and everything is can change. Yes, Debbie.
So building on David's question, what do you recommend designers tell their clients when launching a new logo and what they should expect and how much they should tolerate whatever criticism comes their way?
Yeah. No, I think designers have to build a lot of confidence not so much in the design solution, but in the process that got them to that solution. Like if both client and designer did their due diligence, interviewing people, doing research, market testing, whatever it takes, if you went through that process, people may hate or be against what you put out, but if you're sure of what you did, if you're convinced that you've made the right decisions at the right time, it's just you have to ride the wave, because always it's gonna pass. Like no matter what it is. Like Airbnb, they had the worst backlash possible. Like there was a song about the logo looking like breasts and like testicles and like butt, and any other client would have succumbed to that. But Airbnb was like, no, we did this right. No matter what they throw at us, we're gonna stick with it. And now it's considered one of the best icons in business. So yeah, just write it out. Be confident in that you made the right decisions and that we did this together and that we're gonna stick to it till the end. I think there was one in the back, and then, yeah.
Okay. Hi. My question is also about how to display a case study. For the last 2 years, I rebranded a corporation and all of its 18 facilities that they own. There's a consistent identity across all those 18 facilities, but within the facilities, they all have a unique icon and a unique color palette, etc. So how would you showcase or create a case study for that kind of rebranding where you have so many facilities?
I mean, carefully and methodically. I think, what I would do is just like show like the big picture, like what is the main brand, and then you literally start making like a grid of images. So, the most important picture is big, one big image, and then you start breaking it down 4 images at once, and then 12 images at once that give you a sense of the breadth of the and scope of what you've done. But you don't have to go, not everyone has to see every signage of every building, of every iteration, but as a whole, as if you can get that quick jolt of like, oh, this is a lot of stuff for a lot of things in a different way. So yeah, it's just like grids of images are really good friends in showcasing a lot of stuff quickly, because yeah, a lot of scrolling, a lot of individual images can be too much. But yeah, feel like show it, just like be moderate in how you show what and how big. Yes.
So in today's world of social media, ever changing every second of the day, I think the world is different than when we were here this morning at 9 a.m. What would you say is the lifespan of a brand identity? Like the one that you created for Manischewitz, what would you say, how long would you say nowadays that would last? When will you be upgrading or changing that?
Yeah, no, I think ideally the principle remains that a good identity should last for a good 10 years. But I think the core elements should remain in play for that long, and you can make modifications to match the mood of the audience, to match changes in the industry, things like that. But because you can't build awareness without investing time in it. Like you can't, anytime you abandon something, you have to start over again. So it's all about the more that you can keep the same for as long as you can, the better. But yeah, no, it is what I just mentioned. It can be, if you're not changing, you're staying behind in some way. But it's just like, again, having a confidence that what you've done has relevance over time, and just like sticking with it, so that you don't abandon what you built so quickly.
Armin, back here. I am really curious about your opinion on best brand refresh that you've seen, and what is the worst brand refresh you've seen?
The worst, like of all time?
Yep.
I mean, the all time is easy, which didn't take, but it was, for 10 minutes, the Gap logo redesign of 2010 was the worst shit ever done at that scale. It was, for anyone that didn't know or didn't see it, one day you went to gap.com, and this was, I want to say maybe 2008, 2007, so early of the internet. Gap, yeah, I think there it is. They had their classic thin serif, and they changed to a square with a gradient and Gap typeset in Helvetica. The world freaked out. It was just like people that went to shop for jeans. They were presented with this logo, and the people collectively said no. And the whole marketing industry went crazy. People got fired. People denied it was real. People said like, oh, it was just a glitch. It got leaked. No, it was clearly an attempt to redesign. So that's the worst. And part of what made it the worst was that there was no communication. There was no sharing. There was no press release. There were no case study. It was just like, here's a new logo. In terms of the best, I think, not to keep harping on Airbnb, but like to me, that was it was a really important redesign. Not so much in the resulting icon, but what it represented for the business. In that, they were growing, and they saw that they were going to take off. So they knew that they had to implement something new, recognizable, expandable at that point. So it was like a smart business decision that was really well done. And I think they really started the trend of geometric sans serifs for word marks. So I still think that's one of the best recent ones.
I think with that, we're going to wrap up the show. I think you're like one of the last speakers today, and it's a wonderful way to end Canva Create, having you on stage.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.